All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, Chris, and thank you for joining me.
You're very welcome, Alex. What a pleasure and honor it is to be on your podcast.
Today we have Chris Maes, retired New Mexico State Police. How long did you spend on the state police?
Well, commission 23, but I grew up in it, so I've been in it 70 years this year. So I did my 23 years straight.
23 years. And
Yeah.
we'll get into it in a little bit, but just a quick intro. Your father was in state police and retired from state police. And then since retirement, you've gone back and continued to assist the department and help out.
Yes, sir. That's correct. I grew up in the state police. My dad, J D Maes, was in the 8th recruit class, which was in November of 1953. His first assignment was and I got to go back and say that none of this would be possible without him and his mentorship and his. He never forced me or told me he wanted me to be a police officer. So pretty much, it was just all observation and my desire since I was about 7 years old to be on the state police. So I just watched everything he did, took every breath he took, and just was a sponge as far as the being a police officer was concerned. And fast forward, he put in 25 and a half years. He had a very good career. He moved us around quite a bit. That doesn't happen much anymore. I went to three different high schools in a year and a half, so I didn't know if I was a Manzano Monarch, an Espanola Hornet, or Robertson Cardinal. So my leather jacket had all kinds of stuff on it. So that being said, I met more people in my life and have learned to network around our communities in the state and the country in my travels, and gotten to meet a lot of people. And never fails anywhere I go, I run into somebody I've met or somebody that I've known. And it's all because of the career that I had and the mentors that I had in my life.
And
And
what
my dad was one of them.
and what rank did you retire at?
I retired at captain, director captain. I ran the academy my last 2 years. I had 11 different assignments during my career, and none of them in one place. They were all in different locations. So I did move around myself quite a bit.
That was the way the old state police was. You would get stationed somewhere that was definitely different than where you grew up in New Mexico, and then you'd get to work there, typically in the war zone, right?
Well, initially I had a recruit school, and I might add that Bobby Long, miss him dearly. He was in my class. Robert Perkins, Gary Sparks, uh, got Don Ream. There's a few others. There's only seven of us, I believe, that ended up retiring. But my first assignment was District 5 Albuquerque and in uniform. And that was fun for a while. It was like being a city policeman. And then one day I had this epiphany, and I wrote Martin V. Hill, who was our chief at the time, this very flowered letter, and asked him to please transfer me up north. I didn't say where up north. I just said up north. And so a couple of days later, after receiving my letter, I got a 1019 to Santa Fe. That meant get up here now.
Yes,
Went into
ma'am.
his office, and first thing he asked me was I owned a mobile home, and I said, well, no. He said, well, you better look at getting one because you're going to Penasco. And I was like, where? I said, I wanted to go up north. He said, well, that is up north. And so I went in, Ted Tafoya was just transferring out, and I was transferring into Penasco and spent 3 years up there. I certainly grew up quick up in Penasco.
I believe that. I had a very similar conversation when I first began because I was supposed to go to Santa Fe when I started, and about 2 weeks before graduation, I got called into Major Payne's office, and he said exactly like they told you, "You're going to Penasco." Uh, then I said, "Okay," and the next question was, "Do you know where that is?" No, sir.
Well, I knew where it was at, and I knew it was pretty rowdy. And I found out the very first night that went 10-8 there how rowdy it was. So yeah.
And it never lets up, right?
Nope, it was 100 miles an hour for 3 years. Uh, from there, I went to Raton. I got stationed right in Raton proper, and At that time, we were covering from Raton. We covered all the way to Tex Line to Clayton, all the way to Angel Fire, south all the way to Coldmore and Springer in that area. So on any day was a 200-mile, 250-mile day, and loved it. I was fortunate to be a coach officer to Farron Sagata, who was a rookie there. He ended up becoming the chief. Keith Duncan was one of my rookies, and he aspired to have a pretty good career and got had an opportunity to work with some good young officers there. I was as the senior officer, I just barely had 5 years on, so I considered myself an old dog at that time. But we got to Raton was a place where it was pretty laid back. I was told when I got there, you write 3 tickets a day. That's all you got to do. Of course, I just transferred from Penasco going 100 miles an hour, and I about the first couple of months that I was there, I slopped into a load of marijuana, and after that, we started banging them pretty hard and got the younger guys involved in narcotics interdiction, and then 8 years there, I got promoted to sergeant, transferred to Los Lunas. That was another 100-mile-an-hour event there for 3 years, and from there, I promoted to lieutenant, went into District 5, and from there I went into SID, and then from there I went into Internal Affairs, and ultimately got promoted to captain. I got sent to District 7,
And
and
that
we
was where
won't
we
talk
met
about
again.
that. That's where we met again. You kept crossing my path. I think there was something in the
There
stars. So,
must have been.
yep, yep. I got had a chance to work with some good fellows and ladies. There, Espanola. I went to Socorro for a little bit, did a stint in the chief's office, and then my last 2 years in 1998 to 2000, I ran the academy and had a blast. And got to that was my dream job. That I always wanted to be in training, and I did a lot of training for about 20 years. I did was active in training and getting our officer survival training to where it's at today. Was active in our firearms transitioning from the wheel gun to semi-automatics when we went to rifles. Uh, got to do a lot of training and with a lot of folks.
We were, as state police, I think we were always definitely moving forward at the forefront with our firearms selection as well as our firearms training. When I came
Hmm.
on, we were all issued an AR-15, an 870 shotgun, and at the time a 45 automatic. And throughout the years, that has been maintained, I guess, with the exception of the shotgun becoming optional. But I was always very proud of how uh, we stayed ahead of that, and we really pushed our training on all those.
We realized we were outgunned early on. I know Bobby carried that 1911 everywhere. That's the only gun he ever carried. And as time evolved and uh, the criminals becoming more armed with semi-automatic and automatic weapons, the times were changing. So we pushed forward with getting our semi-automatic transition done statewide. And I might add that we have had nothing but good results with the semi-automatics. People learned how to shoot. Now they have a Smith and Wesson M&P with optics on it, which is I think is pretty awesome. So
It is
there's pros and
definitely.
cons on optics. I'm an old guy, so my vision is fading, and I just recently purchased optics for a handgun, and it straightened things out quite a bit. Brought everything in
That really
a lot
was
tighter.
the epiphany I had as I realized that the front sight was getting more and more blurry, and it was my fault. So once I transitioned to that dot, which took a while, and I went and
Hmm.
I took some classes and got some training, and once I was able to make that transition, it was such an improvement.
Oh yeah. Going back, we when I came on the department, I was issued a Model 19 Smith and Wesson 4-inch barrel. That was our semi-automatic at the time. We learned how to load that thing with speed loaders. We were loading almost as fast as the guys that had the semi-automatics with those speed loaders. From there, we transitioned to that 9 millimeter, and during that transition, uh, I noticed in 1980, you probably weren't born then. When were you
Oh, I
born,
was
Alex?
71.
Okay, you were just a bit. You were 9 years old.
Yes, sir.
We noticed, and I say we as members of the tactical team: Robbie Kuhn, Howard McKinney, Bobby Long, uh, Tim Sharp. There was some others, and I'm sorry I don't remember everybody's name that was there, but we started looking at the officer survival and the shootings that we had. An officer, Robert Rosenboom, David Lee Coker. Uh, we had a couple other officer involved shootings where they lost their lives, and we just went back and we Monday morning quarterbacked those things. We got those the reports on those shootings, and were able to talk to some of the case agents at the time, and found out that we were just not doing things tactically correct. And that being the only word that I can figure is that I never knew what being tactical was until I was. Till you work around people like Bobby Long and Tim Sharp, they teach you what tactical was like, and it just brought us an awareness and a heightened awareness to what we were doing, and so we were able, with the assistance of Jack Jones out at the Department of Energy. I think we covered all this in an earlier podcast.
Yes, sir.
They were very instrumental in getting the state police out there and getting our training done for us. Not only the TAC team, but our officer survival training was all hands on. It was all live fire. Back in the old days, I think they used cap guns and showed you how to do a felony stop. And we took that to a whole other level now. We got away from doing left-handed approaches. That was one of my pet peeves, and it still is. Whenever I don't ever see a state police officer on the left side, but I see plenty of other agencies that are still in the fatal funnel. And with that, we have had a lower incident of officer assaults, officer involved shootings. We've always come out on the winning side on that.
Absolutely.
And with that is all training, training, training.
Absolutely, it is. It's interesting to see that you were at the forefront of that for our agency and starting that training, that tactical training, and then of course toward the end of your career, you were a part of you were running the recruit class. You were the captain over training and recruiting. So I
That's
think
correct.
that's definitely you come in full circle.
Well, I got to see it all come together and see that. I'm very happy to say that during all those years, we didn't have any officers lose their life from being shot. There was a lot of car crashes, motorcycle crashes, but our people learned how to shoot, and that's fast is slow and slow is good, and always cheat, always win. So
Absolutely, and I really think that the that right side traffic stop for us still there's a lot of agencies that won't do that, but I really think that has been a huge factor in our ability to survive a violent attack that's unexpected because they expect us to be in a certain location and they're not, and we're not anyhow.
and the public knows that. They know exactly where we walk up when don't use our lights. We should use our lights for tactical purposes. And that's I learned as a young officer. We didn't have all the equipment they have today. We didn't have throw down lights, and we had a spotlight on the with an aircraft landing light, and maybe or two red lights that maybe revolved if it wasn't snow. They weren't iced over, and we just started our the guys that I worked with and the guys that I was able to work around, we all started looking at different things and putting different equipment on our cars. Once in a while, we got had to have a talk with the sergeant or lieutenant, possibly the captain. I had a deputy chief wanted to know why I had red lights in the interior of my vehicle. I said, kind of like your aircraft, you all got red lights in there. And he went, "Oh, night vision." And I said, "Yeah,
Yes, sir.
that was all." So all those things we were able to identify that were hindrances in our survival out of the street on the highway.
So you did your time with state police, and of course, all those contributions that you did with state police. Then, after retiring, now you are continuing to help state police. What is it that you're doing now?
I won't, I won't go over my first 6 years of retirement. That was a black hole that I crawled into. But in 6 years ago, going on 6 years, I applied for and was uh, tapped by the governor to be on the DPS PSAC commission. Basically, what it is we oversee disciplinary uh, action terminations, if you will. and then we get to oversee the day-to-day operations. We don't get involved in the day-to-day stuff that some people might want us to do or think we should do, but statutorily we're just there for terminations, and we get to interact with the chief and the cabinet secretary, and we have our thumb on the pulse of things, and that's what stayed away from the state police for about 14 years. I just it was one of those things when I retired that there was a lot of issues when it came up about the time that I was going to retire, so I stayed away from the state police. I totally didn't have any involvement with anyone or anything. And then one day, a young lady came into my life who I'd known for many years, and she grabbed me by the ear and she said, "You're going to Ruidoso and you're going to go see those people you worked with." And I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Yeah, you are." And that's the year I went. That was 12 years ago. And I hadn't seen some of those guys, Bobby Long and I hadn't seen each other probably in 20 years at that point.
Wow.
And so it was a good reunion. And so I go back every year. So uh, to all the young guys out there that retire that say they don't ever want to go to Ruidoso, don't wait 14 years because it's quite a brotherhood that we have. We enjoy a camaraderie in police work that no other profession enjoys, and that's what keeps us going there. So
That's great. Uh, you say you keep your finger on the pulse there by participating in those disciplinary hearings. Uh, what are you finding from those hearings? Are you seeing that our officers are still continuing to get good training and doing well?
we this will be our first actual hearing we have coming up since I've been on the commission. Uh, what I do see and what I do get involved in is going and mentoring at the academy. And so there we see firsthand how the academy is still run. And I'm happy to say that during my tenure there, that there was a couple of times that the training officers went off on the recruits, and I went back down to the classroom because I knew they were going to throw me down a leaning rest there pretty soon. So that has been quite a healing process to go back to the academy and interact with those. They're just kids. I don't know if we ever looked that young, if we were ever that young, but I guess we always thought we were old souls. But going back and seeing them firsthand again, where we all sat, and seeing the time and the effort that's being put in by the training staff is, uh, they haven't changed a thing, Alex, since I left there. And I know that was always a big misconception, is that they're being a little soft on them. They're more of a college environment. Well, we certainly want them to learn because we can give them all the skills, we can give them all the tools, but we can't give them common sense. So with that, I see a lot of the instructors are interacting on a more personal basis and getting to know them in a different way than we knew. We went in, I was scared to death for 16 weeks. I didn't look to the sides. I didn't breathe. I didn't do anything because everybody knew who I was and who my dad was. And then in those days, I mean, so now, not that it's more user friendly, but I see that there is that's a little more relaxed state where they're not afraid to ask questions.
They're
And
taking
then when
on
we go in it,
that
well,
mentorship role.
yes, they ask questions. They're not usually silly questions, but they usually ask some pretty good questions. And having gone to 3 or 4 recruit schools now, I've adopted a couple of commissioned officers and gotten to know them away from the academy now that they're out on the highway, and that's helped me in my healing process as well. So
That's
I
great.
just decided one day, Alex, that I couldn't wash that state police stuff off. I couldn't drink it out of me. I couldn't escape it. So the only thing I saw to do was go head first into it, and I've been doing that. So
Well, we are certainly glad to have you back. So that makes at
I'm
least the
here.
third time that we've come back into each other's lives, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, we did have a San Antonio night one time. I
we,
remember that for
i-
4th of July. Yeah.
indeed, we did.
Yes.
It's
I almost forgot about
it's it's amazing how that's happened, and we talked about it earlier before we started recording. How my grandfather and your dad went to the same recruit class. Uh, when I was reading your bio, I looked through that, and I thought, well, how about that? And when you did send me the picture, and I looked through it, and I would say I have that same picture, so I knew exactly where my grandfather
Oh,
was,
okay.
and so we'll
I'll
have to
have to
get
look.
together and we'll go over those.
Yeah, show you where my dad is as well. So
Yes, sir.
I think, yeah, yeah. Uh, um, as of recent new accomplishments, as far as what the retirees are doing and the ones that I get involved with, I stay in touch with about, oh, probably about 50 retirees, and a lot on a daily basis. And getting recognition for the ones that lost their lives, that has always been a job that I wanted to take on, and I don't know how I was going to do it. I don't know how we're going to take care of it, where the funding is going to come from. But we do have the chief's office involved. They're going to working with our legislature to get I-40 pasted with the officers that have lost their lives in the line of duty. Like every mile marker, they're going to put their name up on a sign, and that's never been done in the state. There's a couple of bridges and Daniel's Arroyo that's maybe named after somebody, but we're trying to get some recognition out there for those officers. Never forget them.
That sounds like a great initiative. If there's anything I can do to help that, uh, please reach out. I don't know what
I
I might be
will.
able to
Thank
do,
you.
but I'd love to help with that. I think that's a great idea.
Uh, we just put the thought out there, and that's hoping it'll come to fruition at some point.
And I did see that one memorial that you posted a while back uh, with that. It looks like a plasma cut
Those are oh
monument.
those were an anonymous donor uh, has been gracious enough to take 5 names, 6 names, and make those markers. And I got one for Bobby. We're going to put Bobby's up by Unit 52. That's where he hunted a lot at by Tres Piedras. We got Michael Lavalacea one. We're going to put his where he crashed,
Right.
because his marker is falling apart and falling down. And then I got one for David Lee Coker. One for Toller is coming, Sherman Toller.
Mm-hmm.
And we put one up for Robert Rosenblum up on I-40. So I wish we had the funding to do one for all of them, but we just pulled some names out of a hat one night. That's how that came about. So,
Well, I'll do a little
of course, Bobby's
brainstorming
name
here
was always there. Yep, yep.
and see if we can't find a way to raise a little bit of money for that. That'd be great. I'd love to see that. Uh, these officers that you've adopted, the new officers, are you meeting up with them, having for coffee, that sort of thing?
No, it's pretty much done by text. Truthfully speaking, I send each of them a prayer from a law enforcement daily prayer book, along with a bunch of retirees that I've taken in also. Pretty much just texting, making sure they're good. I know one of them that I adopted was Justin Hare's work partner there in Tucumcari, and I had gotten to know him during his academy, and then later on, and then we have some mutual friends that of course, that's how New Mexico is. We're all related to somebody one way or another, and so I was able to help him work through those times, and actually just because we all speak the same language. I could not have this conversation with a civilian that wasn't involved in law enforcement, because it's just a different language and a different understanding. We don't even have to talk, and we can communicate.
It, it,
I know what you're
that's
thinking
very
right
true.
now.
Uh, just like you say, in New Mexico, you pretty much know everybody, and a lot of times you're related to almost everybody. But our agency, it was remarkable to me. Of course, Frank Taylor, my first chief, I remembered how he knew every single officer on the department. He could see them, knew their name, and could carry on a conversation about what was going on in their life. And our agency's very much like that. We all at least knew of each other on the
Hmm.
department and where the others were. So I've always been really proud of being a part of that history and that legacy.
Yep. And I might throw another guy out there that was one of my mentors that I would be very remiss to not mention is Fred Caldwell. Freddie was a young officer working underneath my dad in Las Vegas, New Mexico when I was in high school. And my senior year, I was like every other senior, probably undecided what I wanted to do, where I was going to go, and what I was going to see. And I was in the civics class, and we had a project going on, and I asked the teacher if I could bring a show and tell, and okay, she didn't know what I was talking about, and neither did I. But I asked Fred if he would come to my class and just do a safety presentation. I guess we used to call them safety talk. And so when Fred Caldwell walked in that classroom, Alex, I just knew at that moment that's what I wanted to do. He had his baton, he put it on top of a desk, had his bow tie on, and of course I wasn't hearing a word he was saying because I was looking at his brass and his leather and
Right.
inspecting him because I had done all my dad always looked sharp, and that's because I did his gear. Started when I was about 8 years old. That I knew what kiwi polish was. Many
And
brasso. I
what it
could
smells like,
smell that
right?
stuff. But Fred came in and did his thing for just a few minutes and left, and I maintained a good relationship with him all the rest of his life, and with his son, and he was remarkable in influencing me to be want to be a state police officer.
That's fantastic. One of the other things was I wanted to talk about is that you've been talking to the officers, letting them know that, um, sending them the daily prayers, that sort of thing. And I think that's a thing that's starting to go on in law enforcement now is a lot of the older officers and current officers are starting to understand that there's things that you're going to see, things that you're going to experience that are going to have a significant effect on you, and it's okay to bring them up and talk about them and share those, especially with somebody who's been through it. And I'm really happy to see that that's going on throughout law enforcement. I'm starting to see that more and more.
And I don't know how it happens. I guess we could delve into that aspect. But when I grew up, when I was a young man growing up and on the state police and seeing all the things that we see, you never talked about it to anybody. You never said anything. You just buried it. You became emotionally detached. You become very cynical. And since I'm a poster child, what not to do on retirement is, and it was alarming, our suicide rate is off the charts in law enforcement as it is with veterans. And so mostly for that reason, Alex, I started back in, goodness, it was probably, I started with Kevin Boyd at Aspen in 2006, and I created a suicide prevention class in about 2008, and I could not give it to law enforcement. They didn't want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to know anything about it. We're just going to move forward. And I could never get anybody to sign up to take the class, actually. So that being said, is I have had a neighbor. He's currently a lieutenant. Was involved in several shootings, and I got to be his sounding board. He'd call me and say, "Hey, Cap, I need to come down and run this by you." And he'd come down. We started talking, and I thought, wow, we missed the boat all those years ago, not having an older guy to talk to. I mean, I probably didn't have the skills to sit down to talk to my dad about these things because he had gone through the same thing, and I know that there would probably be some level of understanding, but you just didn't do it. You just didn't say anything, and so we buried all that stuff. And then, of course, then the end result is alcohol, drugs, infidelity, the whole thing that goes with our behavior
It's almost
in law
like a
enforcement.
checklist, right?
It is, and it's scary because you can talk about it, and having studied it now and read about it and dealing with people in it, it's a miracle a lot of us are still here because that, if not by the grace of God, then where would we be? Because
Well,
left to my own devices, I don't know.
A couple of miracles. When you're 10-8, you're out there working, and a lot of times you wonder how did I possibly make it through that time period, only to get out and retire and be free to be safe, and then you follow a path of self destruction just because you don't really know how to come to terms with certain things.
How to cope with it. That's the coping skills that we learn. Is how do you cope with things? Me and Jack Daniels crawled into bed one night and Jim Beam showed up. So that was, that's how all that thing, and then the behavior that goes with it was detrimental and could have been life threatening at some times. But yes, I think that we owe it all to our Savior that we're still here. And
Absolutely.
looking back, is that I always wondered not only how I got here, why I'm still here, but why did I get put on the path that I got put on? Because my career during 23 years, I did not have a calm moment. There was, from the first time I went 10-8, Alex, John McInich was my first coach officer. We went 10-8 on a Monday morning. It was like January 2nd. We got 3 days to move and get back to work. To get to work, and the first guy we pulled over on the side of the road was wanted for murder out of Atlanta, Georgia. And after that day, I had chases, I had crashes, I had shootings, stabbings, fights. It was like, and whenever they told me, "Oh, you're going to be in a nice, quiet assignment," that never was. I had this little cloud that, and I had a blast. I mean, it was just nonstop. Even as a lieutenant, I still got out in the field as a captain. I still got out and chased cars down and wrote tickets and trying to pick up loads and find bad guys, and I just enjoyed it up until I didn't anymore. So
I remember hearing that voice on car to car on graveyards sometimes. You'd show up out there in Penasco.
are you 10-8? Of course I am. Somebody asked me one time if I was 10-8, if they called in the radio dispatch and asked if I was 10-8 yet. Yeah, for about 5 hours. Where you been? So I didn't sleep very well. I still don't. So
Well, you have to do something with your time, right?
yeah, patrol. Yeah. Now I just walk around late at night, patrol the neighborhood. We have a very safe neighborhood. So,
That's fantastic. It's
yep.
good to be a participant in that, right? Help to keep it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Uh,
I started doing this, and I've said this several times. I started doing this podcast because I wanted to be able to visit with all you guys, my mentors, and those who trained me early on, and then eventually became my friends. And it's been just a fantastic, wonderful, fun journey to be able to do this. Because there's a lot of the stories that that and you I guess I was even a part of some of them, but then you find out more and more of that history, and it just kind of keeps growing. And also to see, we're talking about that dealing with trauma that we have on the job, and to see how right now it's being treated as a new thing, but it was an effort that you made many, many years ago. It just wasn't well received, or everybody felt a little bit maybe ashamed to step forward and get that help, or ask for that help. But so many things like that in law enforcement are just in that cycle, and they keep coming around. But I'm glad to see that things are moving forward as well. We're not just going right back down into the same rabbit hole as before.
well, what I did note in the recent academies, of course, we've been pushing with a couple of chiefs prior to Tim Johnson and Chief Weisler. We had proposed uh, pre-retirement training. We started that also. I don't want to throw my stuff out there because it's just stuff that I thought about that I thought officers needed. Was we begged 5 chiefs ago to let us start doing this training because like I told you, I knew what was coming for these guys because retirement is not retirement in law enforcement. It's not like working down at Dillard's and retiring from that. It's just not the same. And I kept seeing people crash and burn, and I was one of the ones that crashed and burned. And I said, we got to do something about this. And so we were able to master a syllabus. I've got Tim Boffman very involved in that. I got some other Craig Martin involved in that. Uh, Jenny Pierce and LaDonna McElroy, who was a dispatcher for many years. I got them involved in it. So now every 6 months, the department finds those people that are within 5 years of retirement, and they get to come to this class, and we just get to tell them to have a plan. I didn't have a plan. I just pulled the ripcord. I jumped out of a plane at 36,000 feet, and my parachute failed. And so, as seeing as that trend went and suicides and stuff, and I got to tell you that I just saw a captain last week uh, out on I-40 that was in one of the classes, and he said, I was getting ready to retire. He said, I listened to you guys. And he said, I'm making more money now than I ever had, and I'm enjoying my job more than I ever did, and so why should I leave? And, yay! So we got one person, it's accomplishment, so we succeeded in that. And also, Alex, we've been pushing and pushing and pushing for training in the academy to bring an awareness to these new recruits as to what's going to happen in their life, the changes they're going to go through, the things they're going to see. So now they have ABLE training. I don't know what the acronym exactly stands for, but in about the 7th or 8th week of the academy in that time frame, the recruits get some training that talks about cynicism, about suicide rates, and about seeing the changes in behavior, not only in yourself, but in your partners and those that you work with.
Yes, sir.
And so anyway, we got that training now. We get them coming into the academy, and we get them as they're getting ready to depart the retirement. So uh, we've been able to open those doors, and the recruits now and all the officers on the department have availability of apps on their phone for help. Should you need the help and you want to talk to somebody totally anonymous, not in your district or uh, even on the department, so they have access to to other sources for mental illness and mental health. So a lot of things that are happening that people don't realize that are happening, and hopefully in 30 years these officers will all transition and get to retire and live long, healthy lives.
Right,
So
and go on and do other
something
great
else.
things. Absolutely.
I'm not bored. If somebody ever says that they're bored in retirement, I want to talk to them because I have 10 fires going and I only have 9 irons, so I got to keep poking all of them, so
I think
keep them going. It
I
keeps me
think that
moving.
is
So
definitely a common thread for retired officers. Is pretty much everyone I've talked to has said that I'm way more busy in retirement than I was when I was working.
we know how if you learn how to use your anxiety for good, you can accomplish quite a bit.
Just
But if you're using it, like I said, we left to our own devices, we can make a lot of messes. But I learned how to use it for my benefit, and I stay. My wife just watches me walk through the house and go back and forth. I get in the truck and I drive off, and where are you going? I got stuff to do. So these feet start moving, and I got to go. So I just follow wherever they go. But it's fortunately my health is still good. I just turned 70 in August. Been retired 25 years.
that's amazing.
That's
Can you
amazing.
believe it?
Yeah. No, because I didn't ever think I'd live this long, but
Well,
I made it.
I'm glad you did.
Still here. Yep.
So
Me too.
here's to another 25 years, right?
That's right. Yeah. At
That's
least 25.
that's where we need to keep pushing. Is we're going to start moving it up to 100. That's going to have to be the
I want to live to 95. I'll take 100. It'll be a slow 100, that's for sure.
yes, sir.
Uh, um, I personally think that the New Mexico State Police, by leaps and bounds, is probably the best organization that I've seen in the United States. I get to do a lot of driving. I'm getting ready to drive back to North Carolina, and I pay a lot of attention to the officers that are out on the road there and slow down. Maybe I can help them out, but I know that our guys are well tuned, and I know that they're ready for a gunfight in any moment. So uh, I do worry about other agencies and their training, but I can't affect any of that. So,
Well, and
but
in the work that I do now, I have an opportunity to be around a lot of other agencies, and I'm happy to report that there are a lot of fantastic agencies out there that are really, really pushing the training. Yeah, the soft skills. Being able to, learn how to cope and deal with issues that may come up, but also the hard skills. Being able to, if you have to go hands on with somebody, or if God forbid, you end up having to get in a shooting but you make
Right.
decisive action, and you're going to make your hits, and just be able to handle it. The skill level that they have is great to see. It really makes me proud to have been part of that profession.
I think retired police officers in this country are the bottom defense for whatever's going to happen in society, because the police officers that are working these big cities are overwhelmed. And when it all hits the fan, I know that all the guys that I hang with and communicate with, they all carry and are, maintain their Leosa qualifications, and it's kind of scary seeing, knowing that there's a bunch of old guys running around there with guns. But hey, you know what? I know a bunch of them that take care of business right today, just as they did 20 or 30 years ago. So,
Absolutely,
yep,
without a doubt.
never leave home without it.
And it's not only not only that tool, but the skills up here to be able
Right,
to
right.
know when you need to use those skills.
Common sense
Indeed.
and the conversation I had with a friend of mine. He said, please don't ever let them lose this human touch. Everything is so digitized, and everything is on camera, everything is on a computer, everything is, when we talk, we text, we don't call each other. He said, I'd like to make sure that they still understand that at some point in time, they're going to have some empathy
Yep.
attached in there.
Agreed.
So, yeah, if not, it'll drive you to drinking.
I definitely see it still there. I still see the
Yeah,
officers out there doing a fantastic job, taking care of business when they have to, but also just helping their fellow man. And
yep, and taking care of the families. Also,
absolutely,
yep,
especially
yep.
their own families too, which many times get neglected.
Yes, they do. I don't know how some of the ladies make it. Some of the
Well, I
men. My
I
mom
think
was a,
they are angels that are sent to us to guide us, because
yep,
most normal people would not stick around for the type of life that we put them through.
yep, yep. My mom survived it. I don't know how she did. She had a radio at the house, and they'd call the house on the phone to dispatch my dad. So I grew up around the radio and the telephone my whole life. So it was just that quick response, and the adrenaline that goes with it, and the ability to maybe help somebody. Because
Absolutely.
we didn't, how many interviews did we do with recruits? And you say, what's the one thing, why do you want to become a police officer? And they say, we want to help people. I always struggled with that term because I didn't help a lot of people. I helped a lot of people go to jail. I helped a lot of people uh, get out of their car. But then you look back and you say, you know what, those small miracles that we saw, those maybe one or two times that you did help somebody, made it all worth it.
Indeed.
So,
And I think there's a lot of times where we did help somebody, but we will never know. Uh,
yeah,
I did. I was fortunate enough to. This was probably. I had this interaction maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but there was a woman that I met out here in Texas. Of course, I retired from New Mexico, and we get to talk, and she found out I was a New Mexico State Police officer, and she said, I met a state police officer once in New Mexico. He was so nice, and it involved the death of one of her family members, and all that officer. She said the officer was asked to come out and take care of the dog because it was an unattended death. The family member had passed away in the house, so
mm,
the officer went to check on and take care of the dog because this woman said she was going to come pick up the dog, but she wanted to make sure that the dog just didn't get thrown in the pound or anything like that. So the state police officer went and did that, and was out there and visited with the lady. Well, as we got to talking, I realized that she was talking about me. I was the officer that went on that call, and because I started
Oh, wow.
describing the dog, and I described where the dog was kept in a kennel and everything, and she couldn't believe that it was me. And that was probably
That's
a
crazy.
10-year time span between uh, us meeting at that call, that unfortunate call, and then just running into being introduced by other people that we met. So you just never know what you do
That,
that affects people, and it's great to get validation for that every now and then.
yep. You just made me have a flashback. Recently went to a funeral. Well, Ambrose Mascareñas used to be the magistrate judge up in Peñasco. He recently passed away probably about a year ago. And at the funeral, I saw this guy over there playing guitar in the church. I thought, man, that guy sure looks familiar. Of course, later on, we got to talking. He said, yeah. He said, if it hadn't have been for you and Ambrose, he said, I don't know, I'd either be dead or in prison because on that day I picked him up DWI and Ambrose told him, you either go in the army or you straighten your life out. He said, I wasn't going in the army. So he quit drinking. And I
You got
mean,
straightened
it
out.
he turned out to be one of the nicest guys. He was a nice guy anyway, but he just had a, had an issue. But, yeah, you just don't think you're helping somebody, but, that was, that was pretty neat that he remembered that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you wanted to go over before we start winding it down?
No, I think we can wind it down. I know I have my mind is racing, and I'll go back through this again, and maybe at some other point we can get together
Uh,
again and
We
maybe
absolutely
touch on some
can
of
get
those.
together again. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah, some of those.
once I get some of the other interviews done, I'd like to get us back together as a group and then just have another visit.
That was pretty cool. I remembered that. That and I gotta say, is just something that popped into my head, and I kind of letting the cat out of the bag, but oh well. You did an interview. You did a podcast with Bobby Long. It was the second one, and he got to talking about Glenn Huber's homicide and a lot of the details he talked about. Of course, most of us and some of us that were close enough didn't know all those details. Was he just started describing those things and how Lionel Lowe crawled up to all the way in up to that house with no Bobby was high ground and was glassing, and it was quite an adventure to say the least. Well, it wasn't too long after I listened to that podcast. I listened to it twice, as a matter of fact, and I had an epiphany. And I sat down at the computer and I started writing a story, and I was able to contact seven of the eight officers that were there that day and got to interview them. And I wrote them all up for an award to the department after all these years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
They didn't get a they didn't get a debrief. They didn't get a pat on the back, and I know that for a fact that they responded immediately to Bernice's side, and they didn't give a hoot whether they got to talk to anybody or not. So uh, hopefully, in due time, there will be a call out for retirees to go to Santa Fe to see this take place. I've
That would be
gotten word from
fantastic.
the cabinet secretary that it has moved forward to the awards committee, and so I won't tell you the names. I'll tell you in private who they are. And
Fantastic.
it's hearing their story, and they all opened up. I didn't think that they'd want to open up, and I couldn't shut them up. That was good stuff.
That's a good thing.
Good,
That's great.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'd like to get with you, of course, off camera, and at some point, and I'd love to see the that letter, and then maybe at some point gather all of them together, see how that goes, and then gather them all together to maybe have a visit
Okay, that
if they're willing.
that may be a chore. Yep, yeah. A couple of them might be a little cranky. Don't want to get on a computer, but maybe
Understood.
we can stir something up. But yeah, I think that many years. It's 1991. That's 34 years ago, and it's as fresh in their minds as it was the day it happened.
Isn't that amazing?
So, yep. So
Fantastic.
with that being said, Alex, I want to tell you that I appreciate you. Thank
Well, thank you
you.
so
Excellent.
much for joining me. I always enjoy doing this, and I really appreciate you taking the time and being able to sit still long enough for us to do this.
It's been tough, but I got it.
All right.